Pastor Jeremy. I love what you guys are doing, creating space to discuss faith and life. That's incredible. It's exactly what downtown needs. I think this is my 4th or 5th time being with you guys, my 2nd time sharing with you, I'm just a big fan. So if this is your first time here, thanks for being here. You picked an awesome place to be, an awesome people group to be a part of, and you need to keep coming back and be a part of this because they need you. So there's my one little plug. So I am, yes, I'm starting a church here in downtown as well, which you might be saying, man, is that what downtown needs? Another church? Of course, my answer is yes, because as a Christian, as someone who tries to do my best every day to follow Jesus, personally, I just think naturally that leads to then wanting other people to experience the same life that Jesus has given me. You know, if Jesus has made any kind of difference in your life, if following him has done anything positive, has moved you in any sort of direction that has done good things for your life, I would think the natural response to that would be, well, I want other people to share that as well. And statistics show us that more people who have nothing to do with the church, more people who have no faith background at all, will check out a new church versus a church that's been around for quite some time. So, if that's true, the most effective thing that we can do as Christians to allow other people to experience the life we are sharing is to start new churches, is to start new expressions of faith. And so that's what I want to do, because as I was speaking with Jim earlier today, like, if that's not what we're about, if we're not about trying to get other people to experience the life that we have, well, I'm not 100% sure what we're doing. So I'm really passionate about that. I'm really passionate about reaching people who are super far from God so that they can experience a life and be everything that Jesus calls them to be. And so to do that, we're starting a church. Here's the problem. Starting a church is hard. Some of you who have been here from the very beginning, you know that. You know how difficult it is. I don't know how many of you started with Jeremy, but my guess is it was under 10. It was 10 to 12-ish, yeah, somewhere in that range. That's about normal. And look, you're more than double that now, on your way to triple that, and it's just going to grow from here. But starting a church is really, really hard. And it's hard for many reasons, but one of the primary reasons it's hard is because it takes money to do it. Sometimes a lot of money to do it. And most new church plants fail. Somewhere around 80% of new expressions of faith fail. And one of the primary reasons they fail is because they run out of money. It's not because they aren't doing good things. It's not because they're not making a difference. They just run out of money. And so we're trying something new. We're trying something different. We are trying to see how we can kind of intersect the church and we'll call it commerce to make a new expression of faith. So I've partnered with a church in South Carolina called the Rucker. And one of the unique things about our church is that we run coffee bars. Now, I don't mean that in our building we have a space where people can get coffee. I mean, we have separate locations that is a coffee bar. If you would not know necessarily by walking in that it was attached to any kind of faith organization. And we use these coffee bars to generate revenue to then go and plant new churches. So all the money that I am spending here in downtown Las Vegas to begin this new work of faith, a lot of that comes from the revenue of two coffee bars in South Carolina, kind of the Myrtle Beach area. And so we then are going to do the same thing. So sometime this fall, hopefully around the beginning of October, we'll be opening up a brand new coffee bar right on Charleston and Casino Center in the Arts District. And it's called C3. That's the name of our coffee bars because we believe in coffee conversation leads to community. That's what the C3 stand for. And we will use the revenue of those to then continue the work of our new church plant. And then hopefully, if that works, we'll continue that replication process all across the nation. And so anywhere that we can make a coffee bar be successful, which is going to be in mostly urban centers like Las Vegas or Austin or Portland or New Orleans, which consequently is a place that needs a lot of Jesus, then we can be successful. So that's
okay, perfect. So I'm just going to spend a few minutes on the idea of connecting the dots. And connecting the dots is kind of what I think we should be doing, because I believe we can go to the next slide. I believe this quote by Rumi is really, really incredible. He says, "You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop." Just let that kind of marinate in you for just a second. You're not just a drop in the ocean. You're the entire ocean in a drop. And that's really what downtown faith is. It's the substance of something that is so powerful, that's really infinite, that can expand across the globe. Hello, somebody. Oh, by the way, I like to just talk back when I talk. That can expand across the globe and really have a tremendous impact. Because it's not about just what's happening here. It's about what this ripples out into, just like the ocean. Next one. All right, so this is my idea worth considering. It's not the big idea yet. But it just says, all the knowledge and thoughts, manners, habits, desires, fears, character, and pursuits that make you you are dependent upon your environment. So imagine creating an environment where someone's life can radically change, where they can be the best version of themselves, where they can experience love beyond belief. Wouldn't that be cool? And you can be a part of that. So I want to give a disclaimer kind of early. I am not against megachurches. I come from a megachurch, 20,000 members. I think they serve a purpose and are valuable. But my church right now is not 20,000. On a good Sunday, we're 25. Yeah, so my brother is bigger than the church, right? But there's a place for it, and there's a place for this. So changing the environment doesn't change the substance. It just changes the expression. So everything that you think and do and feel would be very different if you were in a different environment. Right? Right?
Yes.
There you go. Talking back. I love it. So think about this. If you didn't have the capability to hear sound, what would this gathering look like? It would be different. If you couldn't see color, what would it be like? It would be very, very different. So your environment informs everything, including your pursuits. Next one. So that guy's me again. At the bottom is a super cute dog, and then there's a lovely new couple. I do weddings for a living. I love love. And church is kind of like marriage. See, these two started out with their own ideas, their own names, and then they merged into one. And that's kind of a miracle. Jesus' first miracle was actually at a wedding. You guys remember that? Turning water into wine, kind of fun stuff. Well, I turned two into one. That's my miracle that I get to do every day. And these folks are amazing. So marriages seem, go to the next one. Marriage is really kind of cool. Love is blind, right? But marriage is the eye opener. So do me a favor, just pick a spot in the room where it's a little image, put your thumb out just like that, and then close one of your eyes. See what you see? Now close the other one and open the one that you had closed. Kind of shifted, right? That's just called perspective. Everyone has a different perspective. And this, for those of you that may not be married, your perspective will always be different than your spouse. Just let you know. All right, next slide, please. So why start a church? Why multiply? Right? I mean, you guys love it here. That's why you keep coming back. So why do anything different? If the whole body were an eye, where would the sense of hearing be? If the whole body were an ear, where would the sense of smell be? But in fact, God has placed the parts of the body, every one of them, just as He wanted them to be. If they were all one part, where would the body be? As it is, there are many parts for one body. Now, you don't put gloves on your ears or earmuffs on your hands, right? Because each body part is different. Well, for you to reach your full expression, you have to be in the right body. And just like a hand has 5 parts, each body part is made up of different components. So that's why we multiply. That's why we change. That's why we increase our opportunities to give people a different environment so that they can be healthy, grow, expand, and express. Next slide. Yes, go to the next one. Jesus gave us a commandment. That's what's up on there, John 15:12-17. I encourage you to read that. He said, "This is my commandment, love one another." Pretty straightforward, right? But there are 3 reasons why we start a church. Number 1 is obedience to the Creator. In the beginning, God created and said, "Be fruitful and multiply." Right? So we want to be obedient to that blessing. Second reason is obedience to the Savior. Jesus said, "Love others the way I have loved you." He gave people the opportunity to encounter Him in different places and in different ways, depending on their need. And so that's what we have to do. We have to create expressions that meet the needs of people where they are. Does that make sense? Last reason is obedience to self. And you say, wait a minute, whoa. Yeah, you need to be obedient to yourself because your heart's call really is to serve. If you ever wanted to feel fulfilled in life, you serve. And so if you want to reach your fullest potential, you need a place to do that. So that may look like doing something you've never done. How many people can sing here on one Sunday, roughly? Give me an idea. We don't know. I don't know here. How many people can sing here on a given Sunday? Sing. 2 or 3? Right. So what about the rest of the folks that want to sing? They either have to wait or not do it. But what if there were multiple opportunities? Then you could express that gift. How many of you would love to give an idea, right? Well, only one per Sunday, except this one's 2. Same concept. Next slide. All right, this is a scripture, and we're coming to a close, that I use at weddings all the time, and you probably have heard it. 2 are better than 1 because they have a good return for their labor. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. That's Ecclesiastes chapter 4. You hear that at weddings. Well, that's the same with gatherings. If you are just one, you can't keep yourself warm because you're cold by yourself. But you add someone to it, and now you have the capability to stay warm. If you fall down, someone can give you a hand up. So even if this just multiplies, you have the opportunity to be stronger because the more opportunities, the more dots there are, the more connected you can be and the stronger you can become. Idea worth discussing. This is my idea, right? God's design for humanity is community. Church is God's design on display, each part doing its work, building up the entire body in love. So that's what this is all about, creating community, creating places where people can love beyond belief. All right.
So, when I'm listening to your talk, I'd love to even drill down further. So each of you, and you guys can take turns on this. When and where did the passion for what we call church, where did that come from in you, in your story?
Okay, I get to go first. So I will give this disclaimer as well. I never wanted to be a pastor. I never wanted to start a church. I never wanted to do any of that. I was content just going from place to place, doing talks like this, because people love you once. But when it's every Sunday, it's a different idea. But what I discovered was people were longing for community, and in my heart was the answer for that, to give people an opportunity to come around tables just like this and really be free to be who they are, and to ask the questions that you couldn't ask in a traditional setting. So I just wanted to create that space where we could talk about Jesus, and we could talk about love, and we could talk about other stuff too that impacts our life on a daily basis. So that is really where that passion came from, is creating community that way.
I'm almost the exact opposite. I grew up, my dad was a pastor, and I grew up in church my entire life, and I don't know that I've ever wanted to be anything other. The expression of that has changed, but I've always loved, especially the shepherding idea of being a pastor. When I was a younger man, probably high school age, I had a mentor in my life who kind of, some of the stuff I shared earlier just opened my eyes to the need for space for people who have no desire to come to church, for them to have a safe place to come and begin that exploration of faith. And so probably since the time I was a teenager, my desire has been to help create those kinds of spaces.
And growing up maybe in a more traditional, I'm guessing.
The church I grew up in was not one of those spaces.
Yeah. So what, as you are in this mode of combining commerce with church planting, had you ever done anything like that before? With the church?
Only sort of. Only in the sense that I started a house church when back in the mid 2000s.
Okay.
I worked as a pastor, kind of had a negative experience, and kind of said, "Screw organized religion. I'm going to go do it on my own," kind of thing. And so I worked and provided the revenue for the
right.
for the church plant. So
definitely different than now. So what has been some of the I would say, like the hardships, the difficulties, and kind of maybe learning this new muscle as far as church planting?
Well, as I mentioned before, church planting is hard, and it's an art. It's not a science. There's no book that you can read that's like, oh, if I just do steps 1 through 10, we'll have 300 people. It does not work like
I've
that.
seen that book. Maybe it's just not.
It's a lie.
Yeah, okay.
Starting a business is also hard, and I'm doing both at the same time.
Yeah. And are you doing this, do you feel alone? What does that look like for you as far as doing that?
It's a little odd in my circumstance because, I come from our Sending campus. They've done it before. And so there's a lot of people there with a lot of experience and wisdom that I dip into, but they aren't here. And so all the dealings with the health district, that's stuff I have to deal with.
Wow.
I don't know how to do that. And even, in South Carolina's health district is different than the Southern Nevada Health District. So there's even different rules. It's like, oh, we didn't have to do that. Oh, well, great. Well, I have to.
Right.
And then, our Sending campus is a large church. It's 2,000 people. We're the same. We're a couple dozen maybe. On a good day. Well, we meet on Sunday nights, and I'm pretty sure we're going to have 7 people there tonight.
Okay.
Which is awesome because we have a guest worship leader. So it's like, sorry, buddy.
Been there.
Yeah.
And so, you mentioned this. South Carolina is different than Las Vegas.
A little bit.
A little bit, right? And so how does that translate, and what have you maybe had to rethink, even coming from this model and people have done it before? How have you had to rethink for downtown?
One of the things we agreed upon really early in this partnership with my Sending campus is the idea that our vision, our mission, and our values are identical. The strategy will be contextualized.
Okay.
And that's what I try my best to have the most influence on. I don't control it completely. I have bosses, and we have elders that watch over everything. So, but finding the way to express those visions. So our mission is love God, love people, do something about it. It's a different way to say what should be the mission of every church. And so working through those contextual differences can sometimes be very difficult. South Carolina is still in the middle of the Bible Belt. It is a very right-leaning state versus Nevada, which is probably a bit more independent. So even statements, sometimes it's like, yeah, that's an okay thing to say in South Carolina. That's not an okay thing to say in Las Vegas.
Right.
It is, we're just outside Myrtle Beach, so there's a bit of an urban context, but nothing like in the middle of 2 million people. So
the redneck Riviera.
Yeah.
Myrtle Beach. So
it well.
I do. I have been there a time or two. So Will, you talked about expressions as well. Talk a little bit about what you came from and how church and the gospel and following Jesus was expressed versus the shift in how you do it now. Because I think even your church last year went through a rebranding. Talk about maybe that transition and how that's affected church.
Absolutely. So we were very traditional. We come from an evangelical, even though we were in Michigan. That's where my base is from. Getting here completely just shifted everything I ever was taught. I went through planting 2 churches in Texas. Piece of cake. Come to Vegas, and I'm like, none of this is working. And what really caused the shift, we planted as Freedom Life Grace Church. And I thought that was radical. I'm like, oh, we're talking about freedom and giving people grace. Oh, my goodness. And then last year, what we discovered, well, a long time, I learned slow sometimes. But what we figured out was people needed different things, and they just needed to have a place to meet together, which is how we came up with the name The Intersection. Because we weren't trying to take away people's individual identities and ideas. We just wanted a place for them to discuss them together and create community. So that shift was hard because I was raised in a certain way. And so, as I mentioned during the talk, the expression can be totally different, but the substance will always be one thing for me, and that is love. So when we shifted from rows to tables, that was hard for people. because they were like, wait a minute, we have to talk to other people in church. And I'm like,
I come here to avoid that, right? That's what
Exactly.
maybe
Yeah.
they're thinking, yeah.
They want to avoid the social aspect. I'm like, no, it's about community. You can't love others if there are no others. And so on a deeper level than just, other people that are different. So for example, South Carolina is very different from Las Vegas. We have it all here, and it's okay here in South Carolina. And even where I'm from in Michigan, certain things weren't okay. Wearing jeans in the pulpit.
You got somebody from Michigan over here, I think, feeling you.
What
Yeah.
about
Not
soccer
happening.
jerseys?
Yeah, soccer
jerseys, all
jersey,
right?
that would be a no-go.
Soccer jersey, you'd
Yeah.
be put out. I'm sorry. You have to go. So that shift and that transition was really to be able to reach more people where they are, because my belief is that at the core, every one of us simply wants to be and to experience love. And so there has to be a context that shapes and molds that and directs it. Otherwise, you don't have the mix that you need. So I hope that kind of answers the question.
Yeah, absolutely, it does. I'm sorry, people. Okay, no, I was checking to see if we had any text questions. Well, we do not. So I think every time that I see a church plant, or that's kind of the church lingo for like a church startup. When I got here, in downtown, I was working out of the year that we were fundraising and team building. I was working out of Work in Progress, and it was a bunch of startups, and everything that I saw was very similar to every other tech startup that was going on. So we used a lot of startup language rather than planting language when we first started, because people understood that context. They did not know that churches have startups, right? And a thing that's common with startups it seems like, is future forward thinking, right? This is all about a new way and a new way forward of doing things. So what in your opinion, and maybe this can be very broad, it can be very specific to what you're trying to create individually, but what do you think is the future of church in America?
Ooh, me.
Go ahead, yeah. I mean, we'll both answer, but you can start. Go ahead.
All right. So I think this is the future of church. I really
Good
do
answer.
believe that.
Just kidding.
And here's why. Because, again, as I mentioned, I come from a mega church where, I spent 10 and a half years of my life in a church with 20,000 people, and I knew about as many that are in this room. So there's something that has to shift with that. And I think people are looking for authentic relationship, authentic connection, and an opportunity to be different. When you have something that massive, you can't shift, you can't change, or you will, shift and change and lose people. In this environment, shift and change still causes some disruption, but you have time and relationship to build that on. So for me, I see the future of church as going small instead of big, going in multiple locations versus one large one, because finances are different than they used to be. People just don't give the way they used to be, though they should. They clear, but they don't. And a lot of that, there are a number of reasons for that. But, when you can have a smaller gathering that doesn't rely solely on tithes and offerings, I love the commerce model. When you have that, you can be free to truly, authentically follow Jesus in the way you see fit, and that's best for the people versus having to do what's best for your bottom line.
Jake, what do you think? Future church, where's it headed?
Wow. I see a lot of really exciting things, digitally speaking. One of the things that I love about some of the ways our leadership's thinking at our church, as Christians, as Christ followers, we want to disciple everyone. And with the internet, you almost literally can do that. We live stream our services just like you do. And as churches grow, that influence of where people tune in from grows. And so we have had several people tune in from Europe to ours. I don't know why, but they have. And which then begins a discussion. That's great. I love that they watch us, but other than them listening to like a teaching, what influence do we have there? Well, what if we could? What if everything that we did in a local context, we could do on a digital context? Now, there's shortcomings to that, for sure. And I believe, like you, community is the answer. So what would that look like? What if through all this effort, we created a group of 12 people who hey, just so you know, all 12 of you watch this. All 12 of you are participating in this small group, whatever. You're all local. you could meet up. And we're not the only church that thinks that way. And that's what, like, I get excited about that idea of using existing technology or even advancements in technology to make the kingdom bigger. So
I love it. I love it because, I mean, I don't know, you may or may not agree with this. I think the internet's here to stay. I think. Cool. Well, we're kind of wrapping up our time here. You guys have been wonderful guests, and we're also going to throw this out to the tables here in just a second. But before we do you have any any last thoughts for our gathering, our community here at Downtown Faith?
I do. I talk a lot, if you didn't notice. You know, that's what I do for a living too. My last thought for you guys is simply, you are an inspiration. Keep doing what you are doing. Keep growing this. Keep being dedicated. Keep stretching the boundaries and pushing further. Not everybody will get what happens here, and be okay with that. There are 7+ billion people on the planet for a reason. Each one of us has a role and a part to play. This is so vital to this community. I love Las Vegas. It took my whole life to get here, and now I'm here to stay. And I can tell you, this is vital. And as more people experience this, I promise you, they will be blessed because of your seeds and your efforts and your work. And don't be afraid of change. Change is the thing that naturally happens to things that are living. And so if you don't change, then that probably means you're frozen. You won't say you're the other thing, right? So just keep doing what you're doing and support this vision. And I am here with you. Know that even though I'm not here Sundays, I'm here with you in spirit. So,
Thank you.
ditto.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, I don't know how to say it better than that, but I agree 100%.
Awesome. Well, give it up for our guests today, Will and Jake.